My beloved father passed away. He was a famous person. As I conducted the funeral service, my husband whispered to me, "Hey, how much was your father's inheritance? Must be quite a lot, right?" I was crestfallen at the tone of his voice, which couldn't hide his excitement. Should he really bring this up now, in the middle of his father-in-law's funeral? "Tell me without beating around the bush," he continued. "Maybe you haven't confirmed it yet. If that's the case, I'll help out too." Man, I wish this funeral would wrap up already, I thought. At that moment, I reached my limit. Is that the kind of thing to say to someone grieving the loss of their father? Suppressing my anger, I responded, "My father has debts, so I'm going to renounce my inheritance." My husband, who had been speaking softly until then, suddenly raised his voice. "What then? What was the point of getting married, huh? I married you because you're the daughter of a famous celebrity, right? Otherwise, who would choose a plain woman like you?" With that, he stormed out of the funeral hall, still seething with anger. However, a month later, he learned the truth and turned pale. My name is Heather Stewart, a 28-year-old part-time housewife with an unusual upbringing. My father, Silas King, is a well-known figure in the media. Think of him as an actor or singer. My mother married him at a young age, and I was their only daughter. We were financially blessed and a happy family until my mother became ill and passed away when I was in elementary school. After that, my father and I grieved together. He was my beloved pride and joy. However, as I entered adolescence, his presence sometimes felt like a hindrance. "I saw your old man on TV yesterday." Was he saying something like this? My classmates, who knew about my relationship with my father, would sometimes tease me, bringing up my father. "Even though you're the daughter of that Silas King, you seem kind of plain. It's disappointing." I grew to dislike that and ended up saying to my father, "Don't come to school events. I hate you. I wish Mom were here instead." Even now, my heart still aches when I remember my father's hurt expression. As I entered high school, people started gathering around me for my father's fame and money. "Hey, what's it like at Silas King's place? Let Heather treat us. She's the daughter of a celebrity, so she must have some money, right?" By then, I had stopped resenting my father, but I was still only seen as the daughter of that Mr. Silas King. Wanting to change such an environment, I deliberately decided to apply to university in a rural area, even though I'm from New York City. My father told me, "I want you to stay in New York City," but I didn't change my mind. Going where nobody knew about my relationship with my father and accepting me for who I am was my wish. In the end, my father understood and I was admitted. So I started living alone, a distant place for my father. My university life afterwards was enjoyable. I made sure not to let my secret slip, but I confided in close friends about my father's true identity. Everyone was surprised, but they didn't act obsessed. Instead, they quietly respected my privacy. Living apart from my father was lonely, but I finally attained the lifestyle I desired. Even afterwards, I stayed in frequent contact with my father, and he occasionally visited me in secret. "Heather, your dad is always on your side. Even though we're far apart, I'm always thinking of you." "Thanks, Dad. You can think about getting remarried or something now." "Okay, Dad, you're quite popular, you know." "No, for me, there's only ever been your mother for a lifetime, and as for children, you're all I need." I deeply respected such a father. As I spent my university life in the countryside, I began to develop an attachment to this place, and I decided I wanted to work here. My father supported my decision, so I landed a job at a major company in the countryside. At my workplace, I didn't disclose that I was Silas King's daughter. Therefore, everyone treated me like a regular person. I worked hard for a few years. Before I knew it, I was in my mid-20s and still single. Although I had a boyfriend during college, we had long since parted ways. I started thinking maybe it's time to start dating someone. Thinking about such things, I decided to join a local working professional social club, hoping it would be a chance to meet new people. There, I met Sean, who later became my husband. "Heather, actually, I've been interested in you for a while. If you're okay with it, Could we exchange contact information? When Sean, whom I had only regarded as a member of the club, said that, my heart raced. We exchanged contact information and started dating. Sean worked as a sales representative for a small to mid-sized company, and he had a bright and friendly personality. He was popular in the club and well trusted by those around him. I found myself increasingly drawn to Sean's charms. He didn't know I was Silas King's daughter yet, but he treated me kindly, which made me happy. During our relationship, there were times when I hesitated to reveal the truth about my father. However, I was scared of how Sean might react if he found out, so I kept quiet about my father being Silas King. After a year and a half of dating, Sean proposed to me. Heather, I love you. Let's get married and be happy together. Sean, thank you. I love you too. When I accepted the proposal, Sean seemed genuinely happy. Oh, I'm glad. I'm really happy. I should go meet your dad right away. He's a single parent, right? Yeah, that's right. But meeting my dad might be a bit surprising, huh? Your dad? Why? Let's just meet him first. He's a kind person. And so, without revealing that my father was Silas King, I decided to introduce Sean to him. When we arrived at my family's home in New York City, Sean was speechless. Wow, this is an amazing mansion. Are you a rich heiress? Well, let's just go inside and meet my father for now, okay? When Sean saw my father, he was so shocked he almost lost his balance. Could it be? Mr. Silas King. Nice to meet you, Scene. I've heard about you from my daughter. Seeing his surprise, my father smiled and eased his tension. I've heard that you've been good to my daughter. Without knowing she's mine, I want her to be happy because I've caused her pain in the past. Because of me, I can trust a young man like you with her, Mr. King. I mean, Dad. I'll make sure to make Heather happy. Listening to the conversation between my father and Sean, I felt happy. I'm glad. I chose him over someone superficial. I'm sure we'll be happy from now on. I believed that without any doubt. After returning to the countryside where we originally lived, we registered our marriage. We received blessings from both families and had a small wedding ceremony with only close relatives. Renting an apartment, Sean and I began a happy life together. That's what I thought, but reality was different. Sean didn't do any household chores at all, even though we both worked. He ignored my requests to share the tasks, pushing everything onto me. What's more, just 3 months after our marriage, Sean suddenly said, I quit my job, Heather. From now on, I'll be a full-time house husband. Huh? What about me? What about money? Well, if we're in trouble, just ask your dad for help. Are you saying I can take advantage of my father because he's famous? Even when I was angry, Sean just smirked and shrugged it off. And even as a full-time husband, Sean didn't do any chores. Instead, it seemed like he went out somewhere to play while I wasn't around, then asked me for money. I was really troubled by all of this, so I ended up venting about Sean's foolishness to my father over the phone. He suddenly quits his job. He's never home. I'm really in trouble. My father then soothed me. Well, married couples should help each other out. So let's wait and see for a while. Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Dad. Take care of yourself at work, too. At that time, I didn't imagine that those would be our last words to each other. 1 month later, while I was at work, I received a call from a hospital in New York City. Your father was rushed to the emergency room due to a heart attack. I'm sorry, but my mind went blank, and I accidentally dropped my phone. I then took Sean and headed immediately to New York City. By the time we arrived, my father had already become cold. The cause of death was an unknown heart failure. I cried while clinging to my father, even though I hadn't been able to say goodbye. However, I couldn't keep grieving forever. I began preparing for the funeral. The funeral would be a private affair for relatives only, while the agency would hold a separate farewell event for the fans. My father's passing was reported in the news, and social media was filled with lamenting voices. On the night of the wake, I went back to my parents' home to fetch some necessary items. As I opened the drawer in my father's study, I was astonished by what I found there, something extraordinary. The day of the farewell ceremony arrived, and as a mourner I was busy moving around. Sitting in the seat of the bereaved, I lowered my head to the relatives offering condolences. Beside me sat Sean, and when no one else was around, he discreetly whispered something in my ear. "Hey, how much was your father's inheritance? Must be quite a lot, right?" I was crestfallen at the tone of his voice, which couldn't hide his excitement. Should he really be bringing this up now, and in the middle of his father-in-law's funeral? Maybe you haven't checked yet. Well, if that's the case, I can help out too. I wish this funeral would end soon. I reached my limit. Are those the words to say to someone grieving the loss of their father? I quickly suppressed my anger and retorted, "I'm going to renounce my inheritance because my father has debts." He was a celebrity, so he seems to have been reckless with money. It's troubling, isn't it? When I said that, my husband, who had been speaking softly until then, suddenly raised his voice. Then what's the point of being married, I married you because you're Silas King's daughter, you know. Otherwise, who would choose a plain girl like you? I see, so that's your true nature. Yeah, that's right. I got close to you after researching your identity on the internet. I've been good to you all this time because I thought I could get a share of your parents' wealth. What a disappointment it turned out to be. It turned out that Sean knew my father's true identity from the beginning and approached me knowing it. I was both shocked and deeply disappointed. Was his surprise during the first meeting with my father all an act? He had been deceiving me all along, even during our relationship. "Is that all you have to say?" I asked. In response to my question, he said, "There's no use for you anymore since you won't inherit anything. I'll send you divorce papers, so don't come back to that house again." I see. Understood. Let's get divorced. Sean kicked the folding chair hard and stormed out of the funeral hall. Without trying to stop him, I lowered my head in the bustling hall and proceeded with the funeral. By the time the funeral settled down, the signed divorce papers had arrived at my parents' house. During Sean's absence, I returned to the countryside once and sent my belongings to New York City, submitting my resignation to the company. And so I ended up leaving the town I had lived in for many years. 1 month after submitting the divorce papers, my ex-husband called me several times, but I naturally ignored him. When I went shopping and returned, Sean was standing in front of my parents' house. "What do you want now?" I asked. "Hey, why are you living here anyway?" Sean yelled at me, spitting foam from his mouth. Considering the neighbors, I reluctantly let Sean into the house with the housekeeper present. It should be fine for now. As soon as we entered the living room, Sean started up again. "So explain it. If you've renounced your inheritance, you shouldn't be able to live in this house, right? You told me about your father's debt, didn't you?" That's when I calmly replied, "Oh, that was a lie." Sean's eyes opened wide. I wouldn't tell the truth to a husband who brings up inheritance during the funeral, would I? My father didn't have any debt. The inheritance is all mine. How much? Sean turned pale. Why would you lie like that? I calmly continued, "That's if you had been a sincere husband regardless of my father. Maybe I would have told you the truth. We might have used the inheritance together, but you weren't like that. And that's not all." As I calmly told him, Sean exploded in anger. "You traitor, forgetting the kindness." I showed you who's the real traitor here, In front of the bewildered Sean, I threw down several photos. They depicted Sean entering a hotel in broad daylight with an unfamiliar woman. "What's this?" he stammered. "I was venting to my dad about how you quit your job and don't even come home, and it seems he quietly updated his will. I found the result of that in the study drawer." "No way." Sean turned pale and trembled. "The divorce is already final, so whether you scream or not, you won't get any inheritance. Tough luck. And I'll also be claiming alimony for your infidelity. Be prepared for that." "You devil money grabber." Sean spat. "That's fine. I'll hire a lawyer and squeeze you dry. Rot in hell, you scumbag." Sean's facial expression changed rapidly, and I had to kick him out of the house. After that, Sean quietly returned to his hometown. I demanded alimony from him and his mistress. She apparently had an affair with Sean despite knowing he was married. Sean and the woman eventually broke up after a dispute over the matter. I explained Sean's behavior at the funeral and the reason for our divorce to those around me. In the end, Sean was cut off by his family and abandoned by his friends. Furthermore, because one of my friends happened to be a colleague of Sean's at his company, rumors spread within the company. I wasn't able to remain there. Currently, it seems that Sean is living in a temporary apartment and working part-time to repay the debt he incurred in the alimony. It must be a lonely and miserable life, but I have no sympathy whatsoever. I believe he brought it upon himself. On the other hand, I have secured a new job thanks to my father's inheritance. I won't struggle financially, but I won't rely on it excessively. I intend to cherish what my father left behind for times of need. With cherished memories of my beloved father in my heart, I hope to find someone truly